Wesley, you need to listen to me. Right, this moment in time, there's arrest, you have suspicion of murder.
I don't. Well, now.
A true crime documentary film recreates the heartbreaking case that once shocked all of England. The story begins in the peaceful town of Tamworth, Staffordshire, where a young girl named Keeley Bunker was born in 1999 into the boundless love of her parents, Christopher and Debbie Bunker. The family lived a modest, hard-working life, well-liked by their neighbors for their kindness, warmth, and willingness to help others. Keely grew up in a home filled with laughter, alongside her two younger siblings, whom she cared for almost as if they were her own children. Everyone who met her described Keely as gentle, thoughtful, and always putting others before herself. Whether it was helping her aunt care for a cousin with disabilities, or simply being there to listen to a friend in need, she showed up with warmth and sincerity. Keely had a natural beauty, with long chocolate brown hair, deep brown eyes, and a petite but strong frame. Her smile was unforgettable, genuine and comforting, the kind that made people believe everything would eventually be okay. She once shared her simple dream. One day, I want to be a mom. At least 3 children. After graduating from Rowlett School in Tamworth, Keely worked temporarily at a small local shop and was preparing to start a new job at a nearby nursery. As Keely Bunker turned 20 in early September 2019, it felt like a hopeful new chapter was unfolding in her life. She had just received an interview invitation for a teaching assistant position at the very same elementary school she once attended, a valuable opportunity that would bring her closer to her dream of becoming a preschool teacher. Keely was never much of a party girl, but birthdays were her one exception. She had just celebrated her 20th birthday on September 7th, and although the small celebration didn't happen on the exact date, she and her best friend Monique planned to go out and celebrate on September 18th. Exactly 1 week later. Even though it was a weekday and just the night before her important interview the following afternoon, Keely still wanted to take a little time to enjoy her youth, to laugh, relax, and mark such a special milestone in her life. After all, who could blame a bright, passionate 20-year-old girl for wanting to celebrate that? Their plan was simple: go to Birmingham to see a rap concert, and then maybe stop by a nightclub afterward to keep the night going. Keely had always loved music, especially British rap. And that night, one of her favorite artists, H, was performing. For Keely, it was the perfect way to wrap up a memorable birthday week. When the concert ended around 10 o'clock p.m., the two of them were still full of energy and not ready to call it a night. So they decided to head to Snobs, a well-known nightclub not far from the venue. During the few hours they spent there, each of them had about 4 glasses of vodka Red Bull, just enough to keep the fun going while staying clear-headed. Monique later recalled that they were only slightly tipsy, still laughing, dancing, and fully in control, enjoying every moment of a carefree night out. At some point during the night, a familiar face unexpectedly showed up and joined them. Wesley Street. Keely had known Wesley since they were kids, while Monique had met him later when they attended the same high school. The 3 of them weren't particularly close friends, but they were part of the same group of people who grew up in the neighborhood. So Wesley's appearance that night didn't seem strange to anyone. He was known as a friendly, fun guy who often showed up at every party, according to reports. Wesley met the 2 girls at the Birmingham station before joining them at the nightclub. On the surface, everything seemed perfectly normal. Just 3 young people enjoying their night out, dancing, laughing, and recording a few fun videos like anyone else in their 20s. However, there was one detail that would later become important. Wesley had been drinking heavily. According to Monique, he was by far the drunkest in the group. In fact, on the way home, they even had to pull over because Wesley got sick from drinking too much. A witness later described his condition as almost completely out of control. Far beyond being a little tipsy, he was utterly intoxicated. After the night out ended, the group returned to Monique's house, where Keely had left a few of her things before going out. It was nearly 4 o'clock in the morning, and although Keely's job interview wasn't until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Monique was worried and begged her to stay the night and rest. But Keely, with her independent and slightly stubborn charm, wanted to go home. She said she needed her own familiar space, her warm bed, and her usual morning routine before such an important day. She believed getting home would only take a short trip, especially since Wesley Street was walking with her. Monique hesitated, knowing her friend was petite, only about 4 feet 11 inches tall, and weighing less than 100 pounds, while Wesley was much larger and clearly drunk. Still, Keely smiled reassuringly and said, "I've got Wes with me. He lives right near my place. He'll walk me home safely. Everything will be fine." It was the kind of promise that puts people at ease, when you truly believe you're with someone you can trust, that nothing bad could possibly happen on that familiar walk home. They hugged before Keely and Wesley Street left together that night, walking down the quiet streets of Tamworth. It was the last time Monique saw her friend smiling. The next morning, as sunlight streamed through the window, an uneasy feeling began to settle in her chest. Monique sent Keely a message on Snapchat. No reply. That was strange, since Keely was always quick to respond, never the type to leave anyone waiting. She sent another message, then a few more, but still got nothing back. When Monique realized that Keely hadn't shown up for the job interview she had been so excited about for weeks, her worry quickly turned into panic. Keely was known for being thoughtful, punctual, and responsible. There was no reason she would miss something so important without telling anyone. Monique immediately contacted Keely's family. At first, they tried to reassure themselves that maybe she had stayed over at a friend's place or simply overslept. But when they confirmed that Keely hadn't come home since the previous night, and no one had seen her since around 4 o'clock in the morning, they knew something was wrong. The real alarm bells started ringing. By 5:30 in the evening on September 19th, 2019, her father, Keeley Bunker, officially reported his daughter missing to the police, marking the beginning of an urgent search that would shake the entire Tamworth community. Police immediately launched a large-scale search, retracing every possible step of Keeley Bunker's final movements. They reviewed security camera footage from the surrounding area, spoke with friends and neighbors, and focused their attention on the last person seen with her, Wesley Street. As the only one who had walked with Keely on her way home, Wesley became the first key witness to be questioned. However, from the very beginning, his statements raised red flags for investigators. Wesley claimed that he had walked Keely most of the way home, but left her near a phone booth because he felt tired and wanted to head back quickly.
You know which way she walked at all?
No. I'm guessing she went there.
Okay.
She was going there.
Which way would she go home normally?
This way.
Back that way? Yeah? Okay. Is that the way you would walk if...
Yeah.
At first, Wesley Street's statement sounded reasonable, but it didn't take long for the details of his story to start falling apart. He said he had felt sick and had to stop to throw up, yet couldn't remember exactly where. When police asked if he waited to see Keely get home safely, his answer was vague. When asked whether she said anything unusual before they parted ways, he changed his answer again. Each time investigators re-questioned him, his story shifted slightly, as if he were trying to adjust it to match what he thought the police might already know. Suspicion grew when detectives asked him to hand over his phone. Wesley hesitated before giving it to them, and then provided the wrong passcode, an act that immediately drew attention. While officers continued verifying his account, Keely's family and friends refused to sit and wait. They organized their own manual search, splitting into small groups and combing through the streets near her home, across open fields, dense wooded areas, and along nearby streams. Everyone hoped to find her safe, but around 9 o'clock that night, everything changed forever. From deep within one of the search groups came a scream filled with despair that sent chills down everyone's spine. It was Keely's uncle, Jason Brown, who had discovered what no one wanted to believe was true. On September 19th, 2019, tragedy struck the quiet town of Tamworth, Staffordshire, when the body of 20-year-old Keeley Bunker was discovered in a shallow stream, hidden beneath a layer of dense branches. It was her uncle, Jason Brown, who found her after hours of desperate searching. That moment shattered the entire family, and the pain quickly rippled through the peaceful Tamworth community. Jason, a man who had already endured great loss, later said that the scream he let out that day was the most painful sound he had ever made in his life. The scene was one no one could ever forget, heartbreaking and heavy with sorrow. Every trace showed that Keely had endured a violent struggle before she was robbed of any chance to make it home. Her clothes were disturbed, her long brown hair tangled in the branches, some strands trailing into the cold water below. Her face bore the marks of resistance and severe distress. It was an image that made anyone who saw it feel their heart tighten, one that Keely's family, and the small town of Tamworth itself, would never forget. The forensic examination later revealed a heartbreaking truth. Keeley Bunker's body showed hundreds of injuries, including deep bruises that indicated she had endured a violent struggle. The report clearly concluded that the cause of her death was strangulation. There were no signs of a fall, collision, or accident. This was not a tragic mishap, but a deliberate act that took her life. The report also confirmed what everyone feared. Keely had been severely violated before her death. Test results showed a small amount of alcohol in her system, well below the legal driving limit, along with traces of MDMA and a mild stimulant, but none of these substances contributed to her death. This proved that Keely had been fully conscious, neither unconscious nor overdosed. Her life had been taken by someone she knew and trusted. All the traces, evidence, and witness statements pointed to one name: Wesley Street. Police decided to bring Wesley back in for questioning, initially as a witness, the last person to have seen Keely alive. He repeated the same story once again, that he had walked her part of the way home before leaving her near a phone booth because he was too tired to continue. However, police quickly realized that Wesley Street's statement was unreliable. From the very beginning of the interrogation, his attitude drew the investigators' attention. Instead of appearing worried or saddened by the disappearance of someone he knew, Wesley seemed irritated and defensive, repeatedly complaining that everyone was blaming him. He showed no sign of confusion or grief, only the demeanor of someone annoyed by the officer's questions. When asked to hand over his phone to assist the investigation, Wesley hesitated for quite some time before finally giving it up, but deliberately provided the wrong passcode. That act alone was enough to raise serious suspicion. Once investigators successfully unlocked the phone, they immediately examined his Google search history, hoping to uncover something significant. Although there was no direct evidence such as incriminating searches, Wesley's behavior still left investigators deeply uneasy. When asked to explain himself, he casually said he was embarrassed and didn't want people to laugh at his personal searches. In such a serious situation, when a young woman had just been found dead under deeply suspicious circumstances, that excuse was completely out of place. While police were busy analyzing the evidence, Monique, Keely's best friend, couldn't sit still either. She began doing her own digging, trying to piece together every detail from that night. When Monique reached out to Wesley Street, she immediately sensed that something was seriously off. His story didn't add up and kept changing every time they spoke. At first, Wesley said he had left Keely near a phone booth because he was too drunk and tired to walk her all the way home. Not long after, he claimed he had walked her to her street. Later, he said he had gotten sick at home, then changed it to on the street, and at another point insisted he hadn't gotten sick at all. Those small, seemingly insignificant details kept shifting, and Monique knew this wasn't just drunken confusion. Her intuition was clear. Wesley was making up his story, twisting his words to fit what he thought the police already knew. In the days that followed, Monique noticed something that sent chills down her spine. Visible scratch marks had appeared on Wesley Street's face, marks that hadn't been there the night they went out together. When she combined that with his constantly changing story, Monique realized Wesley wasn't just hiding something. He was lying. She tried asking more questions, but the more she pressed, the more defensive and evasive he became. He didn't want to talk, didn't want to answer, and showed no interest in helping with the search for Keely. Even after Keely was found under such heartbreaking circumstances, Wesley showed no sign of responsibility or remorse. As the evidence against him became more apparent, police decided to bring Wesley back to the scene. This time not just as a witness, but as someone whose true role needed to be clarified. Body camera footage from the officers showed Wesley growing agitated and uncooperative when asked to retrace the route he claimed to have taken with Keely in the early hours of that morning. Although he hadn't yet been formally arrested, the pressure was mounting. Wesley kept insisting he was being treated unfairly, that everyone was blaming him for no reason, trying to play the victim as suspicion continued to rise. The officers remained calm, gently reminding him that they were simply following standard investigative procedure.
Wesley, you need to listen to me. Right, at this moment in time, you're under arrest for suspicion of murder.
Now, when you say you're going to take my phone, now I feel like you're blaming me.
No,
We haven't once since we've been sat in this car. I think your dad can vouch. We haven't once blamed you for anything. All we've done.
The most critical breakthrough in the investigation came when police obtained CCTV footage from around the Wigginton Park area. According to data from Wesley Street's phone, his GPS signal completely disappeared between 4:28 and 4:52 a.m., precisely during the window of time when Keeley Bunker was believed to have vanished. Then, at 4:54 a.m., the signal reappeared. This time located right on the edge of Wigginton Park, the exact spot where Keely's body would later be found. When officers compared this data with the CCTV footage, they discovered a figure whose build, height, and clothing perfectly matched Wesley's description, seen running quickly away from the area until disappearing out of frame. Although the footage wasn't crystal clear, investigators knew they had found the missing piece. Combined with the GPS data, The timeline became undeniable. Wesley had been at the exact place, at the exact time of the crime, and there was no longer any explanation that could clear him of suspicion. When cornered and unable to maintain his original lies any longer, Wesley Street completely changed his story. He admitted that in the early hours of that morning, he and Keeley Bunker had gone into Wigginton Park together. In his new account, Wesley claimed that they had been messing around, that he had given Keely a piggyback ride, and that she had accidentally fallen and hit her head, knocking her unconscious. He said he panicked, tried to shake her, rubbed her back, and called her name, but she didn't respond. In a trembling voice, he told investigators that her body went limp and that he didn't know what to do other than walk away. But the forensic results completely disproved this story. There were no signs of head trauma or injuries consistent with a fall, and that alone destroyed his explanation. Once exposed, Wesley tried to shift his story again, creating yet another version. This time, he claimed that what happened between him and Keely had been consensual, that they had been intimate in the park, and that during that moment, he had accidentally kept his hand on her neck too long, causing her to stop responding. He said he didn't realize what had happened until it was too late, and that, terrified, he hid her body in panic. That was the new narrative Wesley constructed, an accident during what he described as a consensual encounter. However, the forensic examination completely disproved Wesley Street's claims. Keely Bunker's body showed multiple scratch marks and clear signs of resistance, especially around her neck and arms, indicating that she had fought desperately to defend herself. There was no evidence whatsoever to suggest this had been a consensual act or an accident, as Wesley described. On the contrary, every piece of evidence pointed to the fact that Keely had struggled in a desperate attempt to protect herself. Her friends and family also confirmed that Keely had never had any romantic interest in Wesley. To her, he was nothing more than an old friend, almost like an older brother within their social circle. There had been no flirting, no mutual attraction of any kind. Moreover, CCTV footage from that night revealed a crucial detail as they walked together. When Wesley tried to put his arm around Keely's shoulders, she gently pushed his hand away. That wasn't an act of playfulness or affection. It was a clear boundary, a silent rejection expressed through body language, showing that Keely was uncomfortable and absolutely did not consent to anything. Yet Wesley Street continued trying to twist the truth, desperately attempting to control the narrative and portray himself as a clumsy, misunderstood man who panicked in a moment of poor judgment but never meant to cause harm. Each time police presented new evidence, he immediately changed his story, creating another version to excuse himself. In total, Wesley gave 4 different accounts, all of which contradicted the actual evidence. By this point, investigators were done listening to his lies. They had undeniable proof. Keely's DNA was found on Wesley's clothing. His jacket carried traces of her makeup. And, most damning of all, Wesley's debit card was discovered near the spot where Keely's body had been found, likely dropped while he was trying to cover up what he had done. Each of these small details came together to form a complete picture, and they all pointed in one unmistakable direction: Wesley Street. There was no one else. No more excuses that could change the truth. The man Keely once trusted, the friend she had known since childhood, was the very person who took away her chance to ever make it home again. In court, prosecutors presented every piece of evidence clearly and convincingly. They reconstructed the entire timeline of that tragic night. From Wesley Street's tangled web of lies to the injuries found on Keeley Bunker's body and the CCTV footage capturing her final moments. They showed the jury a vivid picture of how Wesley had transformed from a friendly party companion into a dangerous predator in just a matter of hours. Prosecutors argued that this was not an impulsive act or the result of alcohol, but a deliberate one driven by control and power. They emphasized that Keely had made her rejection clear, both through her words and her body language, yet Wesley refused to stop. When Keely fought back to protect herself, he overpowered her and took away her chance at life. One of the most powerful and haunting moments of the trial came when the prosecution played a short piece of CCTV footage. Silent. Yet it said everything that needed to be said. In the video, Keeley Bunker and Wesley Street are seen walking side by side down a quiet street in the early morning hours. At one point, Wesley puts his arm around Keely's shoulders, trying to pull her closer. Keely gently pushes his arm away, not angrily, not loudly, but firmly and clearly, showing that she was uncomfortable and didn't want that. She then continues walking toward home, never looking back. It was just a brief moment, but it revealed the entire truth of the story. Keely wasn't flirting, wasn't inviting, and showed no sign of consent. She was simply a young woman trying to make it home safely after celebrating her birthday. For the prosecution, it was undeniable proof that Keely had rejected his advances, and Wesley, instead of respecting that boundary, let his ego and desire for control take over. Yet, on the witness stand, Wesley continued to push his fabricated narrative. He told the jury that it had been harmless flirting, that Keely was the one who initiated it, and that everything had been fine until suddenly it wasn't. He insisted he hadn't meant to harm Keely, claiming it was a tragic accident. But when that silent footage played, every excuse he made rang hollow, because that single small gesture from Keely had already told the truth. She just wanted to go home, and Wesley never gave her that chance. But the final blow to Wesley Street's credibility came from his own words on the witness stand. When asked about the night of the incident, Wesley said, "I just kept thinking, why me? I didn't mean for this to happen. I just kept wondering, how did I end up in this situation?" The courtroom fell completely silent. Keeley Bunker's family sat motionless, not out of sympathy, but in shock at the sheer lack of remorse in his words. There was no pain or regret in Wesley's voice, only self-pity. The tone of a man mourning his own downfall rather than the young woman whose future he had stolen. He wasn't grieving for Keely. He was grieving for himself. When the prosecutor asked whether he thought he had been selfish, Wesley replied, "No, I put her in the pond, and that's something I have to live with." That chilling response revealed a mindset completely detached from the gravity of what he had done. No remorse. No acknowledgement of the life he had taken. The jury watched him quietly, and in their eyes, the verdict was already clear. By the time sentencing came, there wasn't a single person in that courtroom who believed a word Wesley Street said. On August 7th, 2020, after a trial that lasted nearly 4 weeks at Stafford Crown Court, Wesley Street was found guilty on 2 major charges: the assault and the taking of Keeley Bunker's life. He was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 29 years before being considered for parole. It was a heavy yet meaningful moment for Keely's family. The verdict could not erase their pain, But at least they knew that the man responsible for the tragedy would never have the chance to hurt anyone else again. However, the story didn't end there. Just days after the sentencing, several young women came forward courageously, revealing that they too had been victims of Wesley in previous years, but had remained silent out of fear and shame. They were between 15 and 20 years old, and their accounts were chillingly similar. One woman said she had been attacked by Wesley in 2015 when she was only 16. Another was just 15 when her ordeal happened in 2017. A third woman claimed she had been assaulted by him in 2019, the same year as Keely's case. Their testimonies exposed a long pattern of repeated behavior over the years, proving that Wesley wasn't someone who made a single mistake. He was a predator who exploited the trust and vulnerability of others. Tragically, this pattern is all too familiar in cases like these. It often takes one brave victim to speak out before the truth finally comes to light, unleashing the voices that had been silenced for far too long. The brave women who came forward after the trial said that for years, they had lived in fear and guilt, believing that what happened to them was somehow their fault. They felt ashamed, confused, and unsure of who to turn to. But Keeley Bunker's case changed everything. Her story became a light for those who had suffered in silence. One survivor shared, "After what Wesley did to me, I was so terrified that I couldn't tell anyone. But when I saw the news about Keely, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore." Another woman said through tears, "I felt ashamed. I thought I had done something wrong. But when I saw Keely's face, I realized it wasn't just me. I wasn't alone." Those words were not just their voices, but a wake-up call for the entire community, a reminder that a victim's silence is never a sign of guilt, and that justice can only exist when people find the courage to speak out. During sentencing, Keeley Bunker's family read their victim impact statements, leaving the entire courtroom in silence. Her mother, Debbie Bunker, spoke through tears about the indescribable pain of losing the daughter she called the light of my life. She said, "We will never forgive. We will never forget. Our home is shattered. Our lives are broken. We miss her so much it's hard to breathe." Her father, Christopher, also spoke with tears in his eyes. "Our house, once filled with laughter, is now silent. Her little siblings are like shadows of who they once were. Keely was our light, and now that light is gone." Even the police, who rarely make emotional statements after a verdict, released one that deeply resonated. Keely trusted him. She believed she was safe with someone she knew. But that trust was betrayed, and there is only one person responsible for her not making it home: Wesley Street. Yet Keely's legacy extended far beyond the sentence given to her attacker. Her story sparked a nationwide reckoning. For years, the legal system in the United Kingdom had faced criticism over cases in which defendants accused of taking a woman's life during sexual activity claimed it had been consensual rough behavior gone wrong. Tragically, juries had sometimes considered that defense. But Keely's case became the breaking point, the moment that forced society to confront a harsh truth. No one can consent to harm, and a victim's silence must never be mistaken for agreement. By the year 2021, the Parliament of the United Kingdom officially passed the Domestic Abuse Act, and a section within that law was seen as a direct response to heartbreaking cases like that of Keeley Bunker. The new legislation clearly stated that no one can consent to being seriously harmed, especially in situations that result in loss of life, and that if a victim is no longer alive to speak for themselves, the perpetrator cannot use the excuse of consensual rough behavior as a defense for their actions. During parliamentary debates, Keely's name was mentioned several times, and her face appeared across major headlines, becoming a symbol of the voice needed to protect other women. Her story helped inspire a crucial step forward in British law, closing a loophole that had previously allowed offenders to escape justice in a deeply moving and human way, even after her passing. Keely continued to protect others, just as she had always done in life. Following the trial, her family released a heartfelt public statement. Keely was the kindest, most beautiful young woman. She was compassionate, funny, and always put others before herself. We will never see her in a wedding dress, never meet the children she dreamed of having. Her dreams were stolen from her, but our love for Keely will never fade. Though filled with sorrow, Keely's story became a source of justice and social change, helping to protect countless others from the same kind of tragedy. And that is what makes Keeley Bunker's story impossible to forget. She didn't lose her life in a dark, unfamiliar alley, nor at the hands of a stranger. She placed her trust in someone she knew, and that trust was betrayed in the cruelest way imaginable. Her story reminds us all that safety isn't just about the places we go, but the people we trust. That sometimes, the very ones who make us feel most secure are the ones we must be most cautious around. Above all, this case serves as a warning for each of us to trust our instincts, to speak up when we feel unsafe, and to never stay silent in the face of wrongdoing. Keely's life, though tragically short, helped bring about real change, ensuring that the voices of other victims would be heard, and that justice would no longer be hidden in the shadows. Thank you for staying with us until the end of today's story in the True Crime documentary series, where we tell the truth with the deepest respect for the victims. If you believe Keely's story deserves to be remembered, please share this video, leave a comment in her memory, and don't forget to subscribe and hit like so we can continue telling true stories where justice is spoken through faith and compassion. See you in the next episode of True Crime Documentary, where the truth must always have a voice.